Harvey S. Firestone says the growth and development of people is the highest calling of leadership. Welcome back, listeners, to the BizBlend Podcast, the show where business is the headline, but the human stuff is the plot twist. I'm Sana, as always, and today for this episode, we're talking about one of the most underrated hard problems in small business, taking motivated employees and turning them into skilled leaders. Because let's be real, motivation is not leadership, motivation is energy. Leadership is responsibility, judgment, and being the person who still shows up when it is awkward and difficult. So, if you run a small business, you have probably felt this tension, listeners. You get someone amazing, like top performing on the team. They care, they hustle, they're consistent. And you start thinking, okay, cool, this person could lead. And then reality hits. The first time they have to coach a peer, handle a customer escalation, give feedback without sounding spicy, or make a decision that costs money. Suddenly it's like, oh wow, leadership is a whole different sport altogether. And I want to say this clearly, listeners, especially for who feel stuck. Like if you have been burned trying to promote from within, you're not a bad leader. You're not dumb. You are not too nice. This is genuinely hard, especially in small businesses where you don't have layers of management, formal training, budgets, or time to babysit growth. Our listeners today, my guest has spent 45 years acquiring and turning around businesses. He says he's uncovered the magic of teaching motivated employees to become skilled leaders. And to be honest, I really love that word magic because it implies there is a method, there is a way out, but also that humans are messy and there is no cheat code. So, we are going to unpack what actually works, what fails, and what most owners refuse to say out loud. So, listeners, please welcome my incredible guest, Rich Ashton. Rich, welcome to BizBlend, and it's really, really an honor to have you here.
Well, it's an honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, Rich. Okay, let's begin with first. Like when I was doing the intro, and I specifically said that um, I love the word magic because it actually helps to understand and realize that yes, there is a way out, but it is not like a cheat code or just a one-day overhaul. But when you say that you have uncovered the magic, Rich, of developing motivated employees into skilled leaders, what do you mean in practical terms?
Well, the most practical example that I can give you is that when we started this program really 10 years ago, but in earnest, we started it 3 years ago. I had a selfish goal, and that was I didn't want to sell the company. I wanted to leave it in the hands of the existing employees if possible, but nobody was ready to serve in that role. So from a selfish standpoint, if I could raise them up to be the leadership team that we needed, I'd
Mm-hmm.
be able to step back from daily activities. It happened that way. It was a phenomenal success. We began with 8 people in our leadership training class. We lost 2 of them along the way who just weren't up to the task, but the 6 people who remained in the class and finished the class, are now running the companies today.
Wow. No, that is actually phenomenal. And I also believe that even and I mean this is applicable for early stage entrepreneurs as well because um, especially when we look at the life cycle of a business here, like specifically when it starts with, the entire existence of the brand or the company around a single person, let's say the founder or the owner, uh, it kind of becomes very difficult, especially when it comes to exit or kind of, passing on the legacy to someone else because your identity, your individual identity, I mean, the owner's identity is completely tied to the company's identity and vice versa. So I think that's a very important point to be cognizant about. And Rich, how did you realize all about this? I mean, were you put into this situation where you were top performing and then you were put in the leadership position? I mean, what was the story behind all this?
Well, I bought the company a long time ago, and it was a heating and air conditioning company, which I knew nothing about. But in my youth, I thought I could run just about any business, and so I charged in. That the company was in terrible shape. We got it turned around. I thought it would take 2 years. It took 5, and it has become a really kind of a remarkable company in that we focus on exceptional customer service and empowerment of employees. We've been able to do both of those things, and it is a passion of mine, kind of helping people break through their self-imposed limitations and become something that they never dreamed they could be. And so it has been very fun for me to watch them do exactly that.
Mm, mm, that's interesting. And so if you, uh, I mean, like, is it fair to say that, and this is specifically around motivation, Rich, like, is it fair to say motivation can be selfish sometimes? Like, I want to move up versus I want to carry others. Like, how do we separate ambition from leadership readiness, without judging the person as bad?
Well, that's an interesting question. Let me think through it as I talk.
Mm-hmm.
I I'm a believer in people, and I don't know that ambition has gotten in the way of people's development. I have found people who are not willing to change, and we have eliminated them from, leadership consideration. But one of my fundamental beliefs is that you can motivate people by connecting with them. And once I'm really connected to you as an employee, then
Mm,
we can have deeper conversations. I can really usually find out what's holding you back, and we can attack your future by looking at the things that have created a ceiling on your performance. And for each of us, it's different.
mm,
Mine was more emotional. Others just never saw themselves in a leadership role. So
mm,
when you forge that kind of a connection with people, they're anxious to share more with you, and when they see that they're becoming more than they ever thought they could be,
mm,
it's a fairly easy process at that point.
mm, mm. Now, personally, I really agree with you because, um, especially around leadership, this thought process, it gets tossed around a lot that it's always, um, you know, linear and just one-sided. Like, there is only a single aspect of being strong and aggressive and very, straightforward. But I believe that especially for employees or people who are actually super talented, highly talented, they have potential, but they may not realize it for the fact. Um, I think through conversations and building that human connection, uh, we can actually uncover so much. So I think that's how a kind of a legacy is built within a company, whether it's a small or a medium business or it's an enterprise as well. Like, we have seen so many companies out there where other ex-employees now are CEOs, or they are the founders of some great startups out there. And I think to a lot, I mean, to a huge extent, it shows that how the internal culture is built, because they're not just delivering the outputs or the numbers or achieving a target, but there is a kind of a mentorship of, within the managers or the leaders and the team members, in terms of situations, like, even if nothing is working, everything is against you, how do you show up, how do you manage everything within that kind of a pressure system? And Rich, let's talk about small business reality here. Like, you know, no leadership academy, no um 6 layers of management. What's your step-by-step process to turn a motivated employee into an actual leader? Not vibes, but a process.
It's there's several pieces to it, and in our leadership training program, the first thing we did was identify whatever it was for each individual participant that was holding them back. For instance, uh,
Mm.
one of our leaders in the company now had had a pretty rough childhood, and she had become convinced that uh, the world kind of disliked her. She's a very talented person, but from an emotional standpoint, she wasn't able to move forward. And when you get to be an adult, the the lessons that life has taught you are pretty well ingrained. So it's not
Right.
an easy process to get past those things, but that was the thing that was holding her back. It certainly wasn't intellect, it wasn't effort, it was the emotional side. And so we concentrated on that. For someone else, who is also now a part of the leadership team, he just had never been exposed to leadership. He never saw himself in a leadership role. We identified him as being very bright, and he seemed to be moving forward. And once we gave him the one-on-one attention and gave him projects and celebrated his success, he moved forward rather rapidly. You can't do these things in a big company, but you can do them in a small company, and that's one of the things I love about being in small companies. My goal as a leader is to connect with everybody in the company over something different. So when I have a conversation with you, just a, uh, uh, an accidental conversation out in the shop, we're going to talk about something that we have in common, whether it's sports or whether it's children or grandchildren, or something in the business world. It rarely has to do with heating and air conditioning. In my case, it has to do with what makes that person unique and what our connection is. And once you make that level of connection, moving people forward gets so much easier.
It is easy. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is such a good point, Rich, especially, I mean, personally, I'm such a huge advocate, and it's kind of funny that sometimes I get a lot of pushback when it comes to fostering not relation, I would say, but fostering this dynamic with team members, especially when you are in the leadership position. um, I really feel kind of a fulfillment, when if I'm able to guide someone and maybe connect with them on something similar, maybe guide or maybe mentor if they're struggling in any specific areas in the work, or maybe just kind of have just a conversation like sitting on the coffee table, or connecting virtually and have a conversation with them. I think that itself makes it so much easier for an alignment in there, and it kind of removes the barrier. And I think that is so much important, especially in today's modern day and age, where uh you know specifically assessing the current situation, we are only seeing that if you are not able to deliver the output, you are not no longer even deserving to be a part of the company. So I think it requires a huge mindset shift, especially for leaders. Um, and Rich, this brings me to another question. Um, so promoting from within, it can create friction. Like suddenly the person who used to be like one of us is now management. And I have been specifically in that position, like it was 8, 10 years back. Same team, I got promoted to being a team leader. But then I have had some of the most difficult situations when it comes to, managing, like on paper, managing the same person who used to be my colleague. What do you do to prevent peer resentment and that weird social breakup energy? Sometimes it can also result in some very detrimental outcomes for both of
Oh,
the sides.
I agree, and we certainly have experienced that. I like to anticipate those kinds of problems and deal with them in advance. So if
Yeah.
I I I try to explain, well, there's a term that we use called controlling the narrative, and I wrote about that in the first chapter of my book. Um, you need to communicate with all parties exactly why you make the decisions that you make. And if there are two people of relatively equal ability, and you promote one of them, the first thing I would do after announcing the promotion of the one is go to the other and say, "Here's what this decision came down to. This particular area is an area that I don't think you're as strong in right now, but I'd be happy to help you gain strength in that area. And then the next time there is an opportunity to move forward, maybe you'll be the one who's ready for that." And I find that by being transparent, being honest about those kinds of things, I think you turn the emotional temperature down and you avert some of those disasters.
Hmm. Hmm. And many first-time leaders, Rich, I mean, I absolutely uh, understand and agree, like, coaching, clarity, and of course, fairness. But then many first-time leaders, they avoid accountability because they don't want to lose social approval. I mean, they'd rather be liked than be effective. Um, because you create entitlement and politics and awkwardness, like they say, hire leaders from the outside and keep the insights team stable. Like, are they totally wrong, or are there cases where that's the smarter move?
Um, I won't say that I've failed by bringing people in from outside every time, but I have failed most times. And it comes down to two things. It's very hard for someone to come in from the outside to an entrepreneurial culture and fit in right away. If they have come from a bigger environment, very likely a small business looks and feels pretty chaotic. And
Mm.
it's unsettling when you come from a highly organized environment to one where people are expected to do 5 or 6 or 7 things in a day. If you've come from a large company, you're probably a specialist and you're good at 1 or 2 things, but not 7 things. The other side is that if you have this unique entrepreneurial culture and you have
Mhm.
highly motivated employees, when you bring in somebody from outside, you have said to them, when it came time to hire somebody that was a little higher paid and had more responsibility, I didn't think you were good enough. I had to go outside and bring somebody in. That's extremely disruptive in a small business culture.
Yeah, it makes sense, Rich. And it makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Um, you also emphasize on integrity, exceptional customer service, and employee support. Now, they are really big values. But then values can also, just become like posters on a wall if leadership isn't trained properly. So, how do you teach a new leader to make decisions through values, not moods?
Well, we start before they become a leader. One of the reasons they can become a leader is because they share our values. We have a very strong understanding of our values all the way through the organization. And
Mm.
so years ago, I looked at an expansion, and I really hadn't been in the company very long. And we opened a remote location, and we sent one of our employees out there to run it. Well, it became very clear to me right off the bat that he didn't understand our values, and so that branch was run without the same core values that the overall company had. We wound up having to shut the branch down for that reason. So I became acutely aware at that point that
Uh-huh.
that values were going to be a very important part of things. And if it took 3 years for an employee to really become immersed in our value system, then that's just what it was going to take. And I was going to put growth on hold while we settled that problem.
Mm. Mm. So I really see a lot of proactiveness here. And I think this is something, and to be honest, Rich, like, very rare. And that is why, I absolutely agree with your point. Like, especially in a small business, it is actually essential and comparatively easier. Um, and uh, before we wrap up, like, let's talk about an uncomfortable truth here. Like, not everyone should become a leader, even if they are motivated. How do you tell a high performing employee that You are valuable, but probably leadership is not your lane, without crushing them or losing them.
That's a danger area, and I'd be lying if I told you that we hadn't lost employees over that, but
Uh-huh.
we're pretty specific on what we expect out of leaders, and I just believe in having very honest conversations, and like I said before, I can explain the decision that was made, and I can show you the things that we'd like to see so that you can be considered for that promotion in the future. It does not work every time, but I just have found that transparency and honesty are the ways that I can get it done. It probably doesn't work for everybody, but it works for me.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, and to add on to it, I think um if you say, like, create specialist tracks or pay for mastery, like, I think the world has enough reluctant managers. We don't need more. But then some owners, say, Rich, that if I don't promote them, they leave anyway. And then some employees say, if I'm not moving up, I'm stuck. So it's no longer beneficial to be a part of this company. So, and this is specifically on retention. Like, is it sometimes a trap? Like, are we trying to keep people at all costs when the healthier alternative could be is that they outgrew the role, and it's fine, it's okay.
Well, one of my principles, and I outlined it in the book, is
Mm,
that when you hold on to a low performing employee, not only do you suffer the low performance and it sometimes becomes a cancer within your company, but that person is occupying a seat in your company where a superstar might show up. And who knows that the next person you hire might be that
mm,
superstar. So if you hold on to people too long at the bottom end of the performance food chain, then you wind up with a company that stagnates. I'm not the least bit afraid of
mm,
cutting low performers because I think they hold the company back. And my loyalty to people doesn't keep me from doing that. Now, once again, we'll give them every chance to become something more than what they're performing, but we'll be very honest with them that there is a point beyond which they cannot go. And so again, we just handle it with honesty and transparency, and we do not tolerate low performance.
yeah, yeah. I think it's very important, especially because these can be really hard conversations and situations, specifically when how a leader is trying to balance between being empathetic or uh, kind of establish human connect. And then at the same time, there have to be situations where they have to take some really hard calls, some really very straightforward, specific calls, because of course, at the end of the day, we are running a business. It is definitely about um, output, growth, profitability numbers as well. So, Rich, I really loved your straightforwardness and uh, very, very insightful answers here. So, of course, if our listeners, they are eager to go ahead and explore more around it and connect with you, get a hold of your book as well, what would be the easiest way?
Well, the book is called Growing Your Own, and there we have a website about the book and about the leadership course called growingyourown.net. And then I'm always reachable at rich@growingyourown.net.
Wonderful. Listeners, as you all know, I'll have all the details in the show notes. So just refer to them along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform, and let's land this. I think here's what I'm going to take away. Motivation is the fuel, but leadership is the system. You look for pressure behavior, not popularity. You train with reps and safe to fail tests. You manage the social shift when peers become direct reports. You operationalize values into decision making, and you stop pretending the only growth path is a management title. So if you are listening as a business owner thinking, cool, but I'm drowning, I get it. I do understand. Start smaller than you think. Maybe one leadership rep, one tough conversation coached well, one clear expectation written down. because the goal isn't perfection, it's progress with structure. And Rich, once again, thank you so much. This was really, really much needed conversation. Thank you.
Very enjoyable for me. Thank you.
Great, great. Listeners, if this episode hit you, I'm very sure it did. Send it to a business owner friend who keeps saying, I can't find good leaders. Because sometimes the leaders are already there in your company on your payroll. They just haven't been built yet. Until then, this is Sana, and you have been listening to BizBlend. If you found value through this episode, show your love, hit the follow button, subscribe to us. And until then, I'll see you next time. Thank you.